Welcome to Rise Up. Our program will begin around 6:40. To find your friends and begin a private conversation, click Attendees in your menu. Search for a friend. Click Add next to their name to send them a connection request. They'll receive a notification on their screen. Once they accept your request, they'll show up under Connections on your menu. Click on their name and begin your private text or video conversation. If you'd like to bring someone else into the conversation, click Add Participants, and you can choose from your other connections. Welcome to Rise Up. Our program will begin around 6:40. To find your friends and begin a private conversation, click Attendees in your menu. Search for a friend. Click Add next to their name to send them a connection request. They'll receive a notification on their screen. Once they accept your request, they'll show up under Connections on your menu. Click on their name and begin your private text or video conversation. If you'd like to bring someone else into the conversation, click Add Participants, and you can choose from your other connections.
Good evening. Thanks to Ravi Burtner and the talented quartet of performers whose music you've just heard. Music composed by Ravi and performed by him and his friends is becoming a much treasured tradition at these events. We also salute the Berklee Institute for Arts Education and Special Needs for its role in the creation of this special musical introduction. I'm Kevin Murray, Executive Director of Massachusetts Advocates for Children. Before I do anything else, I want to welcome you and tell you how happy I am that you've decided to join us for MAC's second and final, we hope, all virtual annual event. Thank you for being here with us tonight. Now, if you'll indulge me for just a moment, I want to give the Spanish speakers among us instructions for accessing interpretation of this event. We thank Inés Fusco in advance for providing professional Spanish interpretation of tonight's program. A los español hablantes con nosotros les damos nuestro más cordial bienvenido y agradecemos su decisión de estar con nosotros esta noche. Si prefieren disfrutar este evento en español, les ofrecemos una interpretación profesional de la actividad. Pueden acceder a la interpretación a través de una línea telefónica. O sea, manténgase en sintonía con esta presentación visual y llame al 617-874-5364. Y cuando piden su número de conferencia, marque al 701-724. Repito, el número es 617-874-5364 y el número de conferencia es 701-724. Allí va a encontrar nuestra intérprete. Thank you. We're calling tonight's event Rise Up, a community recovering together. Even if you aren't directly involved in a school community, you know that this remains a very challenging time in our schools. This is especially true for students with disabilities, English learners, students experiencing homelessness, low-income students, and other students whose situation meant that they have faced the greatest obstacles during this pandemic. The support of these intersecting groups of students must remain at the center of our collective mission. At MAC, we are painfully aware of these challenges. But tonight, for one night, we want to focus on celebrating our accomplishments as a community in the face of those challenges and remind ourselves that together we can and will rise above those challenges. We will have lots of help doing that tonight. Part of my job is to appreciate, and there's so many people to thank for the fact that we're all here tonight after 20 months of working in a way that none of us could have expected that we could do for a single month before all of this. We will continue to express our appreciation throughout the evening, but I want to focus my own thanks tonight on the MAC team. These are the staff, board members, volunteers, interns, pro bono counsel, and advisors who have carried this project on their shoulder over the past 20 months. Almost all of them are here tonight, but one team member can be with us tonight only in spirit. On May 1st of this year, we lost Susan Cole. The visionary founder of MAC's Trauma and Learning Policy Initiative, Susan was a woman of unparalleled commitment and tenacity who poured heart and soul into MAC for 33 years. Do not doubt that she is here tonight. In fact, as I speak, I can hear her whispering in my ear exactly what I can't forget to say. We will pay tribute to Susan later in the program. But Susan would be the very first person to say that she was only one member of a MAC team. On behalf of the community that gives life to this work, I thank each and every member of the MAC team, excuse me, from the bottom of my heart for what you have accomplished this year and every year. If we were together in a hall, I'd ask you to stand and hear much deserved applause. For now, I ask everyone present to find a member of the MAC team at some point tonight and check in with them about how they're doing. You'll see that the platform we're using tonight makes that kind of conversation quite possible. Finally, how can MAC's executive director avoid mentioning that this is a fundraising event? Fact is, he cannot. I want to hold up the generous sponsors of this event. Please notice who they are and recognize the role they play in our community. I also want to thank all of you who've already donated to support this event. You will not be surprised to know, however, that your opportunities to give have not been exhausted. You can easily provide financial support to MAC's work throughout the course of this event. To keep that opportunity front of mind, a generous couple of MAC supporters have made it known that they will match, excuse me, they will match up to $10,000 in donations received during tonight's event. Yes, that's a single couple of people who have made MAC one of their life projects over many years. We are humbled by their generosity and commitment and hope that you will allow them to fully exercise their pledge. Don't let them off the hook. Now I'll step aside and leave you with Lilia Malikci, MAC's communications manager and the producer of tonight's virtual extravaganza. Have a great evening.
Thank you, Kevin, and thank you to all of you for joining us tonight for our Rise Up event. So here we have our main screen. This should look similar to how your screen looks right now. Here under main program is where the program will be streaming. Here is the main chat over on the right. If you write something in this chat, all of the attendees and speakers will be able to see what you have to say. So we encourage you to introduce yourself and talk about your connection to MAC here in the chat. We'll also be sharing some important messages there throughout tonight as well. So be sure you keep an eye on that. If you would like to minimize that, you can just click the arrow right here, and then the screen will get bigger so you can focus on the program. Next, I'm going to just run through some of the things here in our main menu. I also encourage you to explore. Under program details, you can see our agenda for the evening, everything we have coming up. Under speakers, you can learn a little bit more about our speakers for tonight, read their bios. This button right here, attendees, is really important. This is where you'll be able to see who else is here tonight and find any friends that you would like to connect with. So you can either scroll through or you can search for a name if you're looking for anyone in particular. So I'll just type in Leslie and she pops up right here. I can see her name and face, and she's marked with a blue dot because she's MAC staff, so you can find MAC staff that way. If I click add here, Leslie will receive a notification on her screen that sends her sort of like a friend request on Facebook. That'll pop up and ask her to accept my request to connect with her. If she accepts it, she will pop up over here under connections. So here I have everyone who's already accepted a connection from me. You would just click on their name here, and then you have the opportunity to chat with them privately. So since B has accepted a connection request from me already, I can either message her or I can video chat with her right here. And this brings us into a private room. So sort of like a little side conversation that you would have at an in-person event. If I'm talking to B and I decide I want to bring somebody else into the conversation, I can click add participants right here. And Amy's also a connection of mine, so I can pull her into the room. So that's a nice way to connect with others here at the event. And we really encourage you to check that out. So just to review that, you click home here to get to the main menu, attendees to see the list of attendees, and then you connect with them by clicking the add button next to their name. We hope you'll click on meet the speakers right here to have the opportunity to meet with our keynote and our award winner tonight, and Kevin Murray will be there as well. So just click meet the speakers. If you click join here, That's where Reverend Bodrick, Miss Fields, and Kevin will all be hanging out to greet our attendees and say hello to you. So just click meet the speakers, join, and you'll be brought into a room with them. And you can turn your camera and your microphone on or off if you would prefer to just chat. If you have any issues tonight, if you have any questions about the platform or how to connect with people, you can always click tech support. And Amy and B will be in a room here to answer any of your questions. And that's it. So we hope you'll take full advantage of this platform, click through, do some exploring, connect with your friends. And next, I have the honor of introducing our MC for the evening, Carlos Rojas Alvarez. Carlos is the manager of the Executive Office for the Decolonizing Wealth Project. He's a champion of education justice, immigrant rights, and racial equity, and he's a longtime board member and friend of MAC. Please join me in welcoming Carlos.
Thank you so much, Lilia. On behalf of MAC's Board of Directors, let me first echo Kevin's thanks to all of you who have joined us tonight. I am so excited to be with you, to see familiar faces, to see new faces, for what is going to be an amazing evening, as it always is. I'll give you all a moment right now just to say hi in the chat on your screen if you haven't already. And let us know how you became a part of the MAC community. So while you type your answer, I want to share how I became a part of the MAC community. I first met MAC when I was in the Boston Public Schools as a high school student, and I got to witness and experience firsthand MAC's powerful partnership with youth and parent and community advocates to transform not only our city, but our state's paradigm for school discipline. This is one of the many, many reasons why I'm still here all of these years later. I now have the honor of introducing Dr. Johnny Hamilton Mason. Dr. Hamilton Mason is the professor and Eva Whiting White Endowed Chair at Simmons School of Social Work and a longtime member of MAC's Board of Directors. Please join me in welcoming Johnny.
Thank you so much, Carlos. It is my pleasure to introduce Reverend William Bodrick to you. Reverend Bodrick is the senior pastor of the historic 12th Baptist Church in Roxbury, a practicing lawyer at Brown Rudnick, and the newest member of MAC's Board of Directors. As a longtime advocate for racial justice and quality public education, Reverend Bodrick also serves as president and chairperson of Boston's Network for Black Student Achievement. And he is a member of the Boston Public Schools Opportunity and Achievement Gap Task Force. In addition, he serves on the Boston Bar Association Task Force on Police Accountability. He is a member of Massachusetts Attorney General for Racial Justice and Equity Council. He's also a member of the Boston branch of the NAACP. And it continues, he serves on Massachusetts Black Lawyers Association, and he's also a member of Omega Phi Psi fraternity. So Reverend Bodrick's work extends beyond the boundaries of 12th Baptist Church. And in addition to being a preacher, he is an advocate, he's a lawyer, he's a mentor, and if that's not enough, he's a social justice education warrior. Reverend Bodrick embodies the theme of tonight's event, Rise Up, a community recovering together. Please join me in welcoming Reverend Bodrick.
Good evening, everyone. It is truly a pleasure to be with each and every one of you on this evening and to be here on this day. I want to thank Dr. Johnny Hamilton Mason for that warm introduction, and to our MC, Carlos Rojas Alvarez, and to our executive director, Kevin Murray, and his longtime work in advocacy, to my fellow MAC board members, to the amazing Rise Up for Equity awardee, Barbara Fields, who I affectionately call my education grandmother, and to each and every one of you in this fight for justice. It is truly an honor and a pleasure to bring forward tonight the keynote address. At the offset, I must just say that I bring greetings from the historic 12th Baptist Church, where I'm glad to serve as the 14th senior pastor. And I am glad to also serve as chairperson and president of the Boston Network for Black Student Achievement. And I bring you greetings from both the church and the organization. On this night, I come to the space as a child of an educator who served in public schools for over 30 years as a teacher and an administrator. I come as the child of a pastor who also worked in the Job Corps Center to serve young people who fell through our social safety nets. And I come as a public school graduate and the beneficiary of so many advocates like yourself who ensure that young people like me have the resources and the opportunities to be before you today. For tonight, I'd like to tag the topic of this keynote: we must rise. We must rise. My brothers and sisters, we have gathered together today in the spirit of hope and community. And on this night, we are celebrating the many ways that we have collectively faced this difficult moment. We are working to rise above circumstances that have put our children, our families in very vulnerable situations, and each and every one of us have done our part to try to make things whole again. As an organization, we have been working to envision a Massachusetts where all of our children, no matter the barriers they're facing, have an equitable opportunity to learn, to grow, and to thrive. And in order for us to continue to overcome the obstacles that are before us, then I believe there are a few things that we need in order to rise. The first thing that I think we need and that we must do if we are to rise is that we need a recovery that reimagines our schools and restores our children. This pandemic has been a difficult season for our country and our Commonwealth, and it has created a disproportionate effect amongst Black and Brown communities, exacerbating what I call pre-existing opportunity gaps that were already present in our educational system. And we all know that the lives of so many children will be affected by this 2-year stint. Our children have had to manage to learn remotely. They've had to learn how to engage in isolation. They've had to work through the trauma of possibly losing a loved one during this pandemic. So many of our young people were affected by food insecurity. I know this because we're feeding over 200 families a week at 12th Baptist Church. So many of our young people lived in households where there was job insecurity, and it created vulnerabilities amongst their living existence. And all of this was happening to our young people and youth while they were missing moments that will have great impacts on their social and emotional development even until this day. And I believe if we're going to recover, we're going to have to ensure that there's an investment in our schools, in the infrastructure, and in the facilities that provide healthy spaces for our children to learn. We will need learning spaces that close technology gaps and equip our children and staff with the tools to excel. We're going to need buildings with windows, with HVAC systems, with clean restrooms and fully furnished libraries. We're going to need resources poured in so that our children and young people will be able to have thriving experiences as they go back into the school systems that they have forgotten. And if we're going to restore our children, then we need to invest in staff and in services that will work to make them whole. You've seen the headlines where so many Disruptions have arisen in our school systems, but we cannot deny in which these things have come about. And so I believe we're going to need social workers for this recovery. We're going to need more nurses and more psychologists and more psychiatrists and other services that our school systems need. We're going to need to round our young people and do the wholesome healing that they need. That will also accompany all of the great educators that have been working day in and day out to bring a high quality education to our children each day. The next thing that I believe we must do to face this moment is that we must insist on inclusion. We can no longer create environments that are exclusive and that support the children that need the most, that don't support the children that need the most, particularly those students where English is their second language and those students who live with disabilities. We must be sure that we are shaping our schools, that they don't create divisions, but they create inclusive dynamics so that all of our children can learn and grow together. And this must to ensure that we invest in staff that does this work so that all of them may create community together. We must include families. We must prioritize engaging parents and guardians, insist on making sure that they are intimately a part of the education of their children. That if we don't do this by including everyone, we miss this moment. But I believe we will rise. And if we're going to rise, then we're going to have to support that is sustainable. This can't be a one-year thing. This can't be a one-moment situation. The impacts of COVID-19 is going to force us to be deep in not just this year, not just next year, but in the decade and in the years to come. Our children need constant support. And that support can't just come from home, but it has to come from organizations, has to come from volunteers, it has to come from our business sector, from our legal sector, it has to come from advocates who will be there at school committee meetings and work in communities to actually address the issues that are at hand. We need folks on the front lines to ensure that our children get the education and that justice is lived. More importantly, I believe we have to shift the way in which we look at schools. And we have to view our schools as anchor institutions that are hubs for communities. We have to do the work which will ensure that these communities will increase both support and visibility for our young people and create spaces that are multi-use services that go beyond the scope of just schooling, but spaces for enrichment, spaces for the arts, spaces for communal connectivity. We're going to need to look at the schools as new havens to bring not only to our children, but to their families and to their neighborhoods. But last but not least, if we're going to do this work and rise, we ensure that our schools are equitable for everyone. We must ensure that we are creating anti-racist spaces, anti-racist practices, anti-racist curriculum in all of our school systems, not only in our city, but across the Commonwealth. We have to implement culturally and linguistically equitable practices, and we must begin trying equity, not just in rhetoric, but in our reality. We must invest in early childhood to ensure equity. We must increase the of our educators to ensure equity. We must provide safety and sustenance for our income students to ensure equity. to have to create restorative justice spaces in communities, in our schools, so that equity is realized. And I just believe that those who are here tonight are committed to rising up. Those who have invested, those who have given their time and even their money to this cause are committed to rising up, and we're going to meet this moment. And the only way to rise up is that we ensure that opportunity rises up among us, that we ensure that resilience rises among us, that we ensure that compassion is up among us, that we ensure that equity rises up among us, that we ensure that justice rises up among us, so that every child in this commonwealth will have all that they need to continue on and build a brighter future. And I just believe that we will rise. I believe that we can rise. I believe that we must rise. And in the words of that great poet laureate Maya Angelou, we must leave behind the nights of terror and fear. We must go into the daybreak that's wondrously clear and rise, bringing the gifts of our ancestors. She said, I am the dream and the hope of the slave. I rise, I rise, I rise. And if we rise, then our children will rise. Then our families will rise. Then our communities will rise. Then our commonwealth will rise. My brothers and sisters, let us see beyond the pandemic. Let us push to bring about healing. Let us ensure that every child has a quality education. Let us not just see them in this moment, but let us see them in their future. And if we commit to that, if we commit to recovery, if we commit to inclusion, if we commit to ensuring that we're supporting equitable and sustainable practices, then I believe we can, we will, and I implore you that we must rise. Thank you. May God bless you, and let us go forward with the work of equity.
Wow. Thank you, Reverend Bodrick, for those powerful, powerful words and your moving reminder that while it has been a very difficult period, we must rise. I want to take a moment to remind you that the platform on which we're presenting this event is designed to allow you to connect individually with others in attendance, perhaps like how you might connect with someone you haven't seen in a while if we were all together. So take a look at the list of attendees as we continue with our program and invite someone to check in if you'd like. Now, the call to rise up, as Reverend Bodrick said so beautifully, in this period of recovery comes from students, parents, and families driven by a deep love and commitment to equity. Carolina Vargas fought hard for her son Ran Luis to learn at his school alongside his non-disabled peers. When COVID-19 hit, his education saw a major setback, and the hard work she put in to have him included was at risk of unraveling. Let's hear Carolina tell her story of making inclusion work for her family in the face of a global pandemic.
Mi nombre es Carolina Vargas, soy dominicana, vivo en Lawrence. Tengo un niño de 7 años que se llama Ran Luis. Es un niño súper alegre, divertido, le encanta la escuela, le gusta más que todo la merienda y la hora del recreo. Yo inicié con los servicios de MAT porque a Ran Luis, en el tiempo que me lo diagnosticaron con autismo, en las escuelas públicas de Loren era súper difícil poder entrar con un IP. Matt y la señora Diana Santiago me ayudaron no solo a poder entrar, sino a recibir la ayuda y el soporte que mi niño necesitaba en ese momento. Y yo también, cuando tuvimos que irnos remoto, el R.I.S.E fue retrocediendo en lo que era el aprendizaje, ya cosa que él se sabía, teníamos que reforzarla mucho para que él recordara. Fue miembros de nuestra familia perdieron el trabajo para poder estar desde casa a tiempo completo con R.I.S.E desde la hora que iniciaba la labor de escuela, que era a las 8 de la mañana, hasta las 2 de la tarde, con R.I.S.E sentado al ladito. Y fueron tiempos bien difíciles, porque R.I.S.E no entiende que si las clases comienzan a las 8, él tiene que estar sentado, sino que teníamos que estar al ladito de él para explicarle todo. También tuvimos que volvernos maestros. Si yo trabajaba, el papá de R.I.S.E no podía. Si él trabajaba, yo no podía. Fueron tiempos bien difíciles. Cuando llega COVID, vuelvo de nuevo. En la escuela que R.I.S.E pasa, no hay ningún soporte para los niños que tienen IP. No hay la ayuda necesaria para llevarlo donde lo que él necesita. R.I.S.E duró aproximadamente medio año escolar en un ambiente que no era inclusivo. Yo sé que para ellos no seguían una rutina habitual, que debían seguir en un ambiente de inclusión. El salón va a estar R.I.S.E, su otro amiguito y ya. Bueno, pues ahí de una vez tocó las puertas para Matt nuevamente, y como siempre, con toda la asesoría que necesité, la señora Diana Santiago y Matt respondieron a mi llamado. Logré cambiar al niño de la escuela. Ya cuando entraron de forma presencial, obtuve de nuevo los recursos de que ya él está en un salón que puede socializar, que es inclusivo, y está tomando todos los recursos y todo el soporte que él necesita para progresar, que eso es lo que me hace feliz a mí y sé que hace feliz a más. Yo creo que es de vital importancia que todos los niños tengan la oportunidad de desarrollarse en un salón donde puedan correr juntos, hablar juntos, compartir, tener el chance de levantar la mano, pedir un turno y aprender de lo que sus compañeros hacen. Los niños necesitan aprender y creo que la mejor manera es la inclusión. Si no fuera por Matt, yo no estuviera en estos momentos recibiendo la ayuda que yo recibo para mi niño, que no es una ayuda económica. Las ayudas no nada más son económicas, sino de superación y de logro para mi familia y mi hijo. Gracias, Matt.
Gracias, Carolina. Thank you for sharing your story, your passion, and your love for R.I.S.E and for equity. Creo que Carolina está aquí esta noche. Si estás aquí, por favor, Carolina, danos un saludito en el chat. Carolina's words are still resonating with me when she said that she doesn't think that she would be receiving the support she is getting now if it wasn't for MAC. And I want to remind you that you can support MAC at any point during this event by just clicking on the Donate Now button on the screen. And don't forget that we're doing our best to match the challenge gift offered by our generous donors. And in the same way that this has been a difficult year for our community, we at MAC have also had our challenges. We can't talk tonight about rising up without honoring a woman who devoted her entire life to lifting up MAC and the people we serve. Susan Cole worked at MAC for 33 years and was the founding director of our Trauma and Learning Policy Initiative. She built a field and launched a movement to widen awareness of the impact of trauma on children's learning and the need for trauma-sensitive schools that are safe spaces that respond to every child's social and emotional needs. Susan passed away suddenly this past May, and we still feel her loss deeply, deeply, every single day. We now want to share a short video remembrance of our beloved colleague, Susan Cole.
Susan began her 33 years at MAC in 1988. She devoted her career to pursuing systemic change, using U.B. Jones's model of multi-strategic advocacy. In Susan's first decade with MAC, she began engaging many of these strategies, including litigation. She took over from Tom Mila the Allen v. McDonough case, which was a landmark case that MAC filed in 1976 against the Boston Public Schools for their noncompliance with the then new Chapter 766 special education law. After a 22-year-long legal battle, the case ended with the Boston Public School being brought into compliance with the law and beginning to provide special education resources to Boston students. As the Allen case was wrapping up, and as a result of Susan's work with the Children's Law Support Project, she began to grapple with understanding the impact of violence, especially domestic violence, on children. This work led to her founding the Trauma and Learning Policy Initiative, what we call TLPI.
I started as a special education teacher, and I was in the Watertown Public Schools. I had a resource room in the basement. I went on to go to law school because my goal at the time was to get the students out of the basement. I wanted to be part of the integration movement. And later found myself working at MAC, Mass Advocates for Children, as a lawyer, when all of a sudden, in the middle of the night, the legislature passed in Massachusetts the most onerous school expulsion law. We were getting calls with students getting suspended. And I was representing them as fast as I could go. I was a young lawyer and I was representing them, but for the first time in my life, I wasn't being terribly successful. I was chairing something called the Children's Law Support Project, which was an interdisciplinary project among all the different sort of legal services areas. And I began to work very closely with the people doing domestic violence. The cases just went on and on. And so we began to ask in the cases when I get these calls, like, has there been any violence? And I began to realize there's a connection here. And so there I was with my ahas and standing before what felt like a really big issue. So we formed a task force and we began to all work together in collaboration to figure out what should we be doing? What should we be doing at the policy level? It was very clear to me that in large part, this trauma and these ACEs were impacting language and language development, or the reactivity was really causing kids to get in a lot of trouble. I began to see this is really affecting learning in the classroom. So we started, I started like, this is the Purple Book. It was a coming together of many, many people. My whole life's work's been about education in schools. Well, any kind of education research will tell you that relationships are absolutely critical to learning. We learn in relationships. We feel safe in relationships. We feel connected in relationships. So safety, connection, belongingness. But then you step back a little further and you say, but that's not how schools are run.
And so began the next decade and a half of Susan's work, addressing the question of how can we help schools create the kinds of environments that are best for teaching and learning by fostering relationships, safety, connection, and belonging for everyone, students and educators alike. Susan's next set of questions framed the next phase of MAC's TLPI work. How do we set the conditions for system change? Can we make schools more human? The Safe and Supportive Schools Framework statute was a way to move this work forward. Susan also understood the critical importance of addressing the harm of systemic racism and how that impacts what students of color experience in school.
I don't think we can move forward with this movement without dealing with racism and trauma. One thing I could leave you with is that we need to listen to students. We don't need to have people like me up there saying these things, if we can support students to say it themselves, because they know, they live it, and they know what they need. We've got to make that a regular part of it, reform. So everything's got to turn upside down a bit. The students are saying, when I have a relationship with the teacher that works, it's heaven. And the educators are saying it. We just have to work together and build that voice till it just, they hear it. It just seems like now's the time. It doesn't take many people to change the world, but it takes a few at least. So none of us can work in isolation.
I principally come because of my great respect and admiration for Susan Cole, who for decades has used her legal knowledge and skills to be a long-distance runner for social justice. And I greatly appreciate you, and when you called me, I couldn't say no.
Thank you for everything, Susan. And beautiful, beautiful high praise coming from Hubie Jones, Mac's founder, who is also here with us tonight. If you can, Hubie, please give us a shout out in the chat. Susan and Hubie made a powerful team, and without them, we would not be here tonight. Holding Susan and all members of the Mac community who have left us close, we now turn to honoring a member of the community whose tireless work on behalf of quality and equity in the Boston Public Schools we hope will continue long, long into the future. I welcome back Reverend Bodrick for the presentation of Mac's inaugural Rise Up for Equity Award.
Good evening. My name is Reverend Willie Bodrick II, and I serve as senior pastor in Historic Rock Baptist Church, and I am the newest board member for the Massachusetts Advocates for Children. It is my immense pleasure to speak about the next recipient on this evening. When I came to Massachusetts almost 10 years ago, it was those elders in our community that nurtured me, that poured into me, that guided me on the path towards addressing the issues that we're facing in this city. One of the biggest issues in our city is education, and ensuring that quality education is given to every child in this Commonwealth is something that has continually been on the issue list for every single mayor and every single superintendent in this state. But the reason we've been able to push forward, despite our painful history, is because there have been advocates, there have been parents, there have been educators, and there have been those who continue to fight to ensure that opportunity and access was available to all of our families, particularly our children. When I came to Boston 10 years ago, the work was very heavy. There were transitions in leadership in the city of Boston. And there were issues that were facing Black and brown communities that had persisted for over generations. And I remember in the meeting room in this church, when I sat with this advocate who let me know all that had been happening for the past 30 years she had worked in the district, and so many of the gaps that they've been trying to close for years. And it was during this time when she said, Rev, we need some new energy. We need new blood. I'm sure they're tired of hearing me speak. But even to this day, she hasn't stopped speaking. She hasn't stopped working. Her advocacy continued even after retirement. It was in that meeting room some 10 years ago now that we began to do the work of building the Boston Network for Black Student Achievement, working to bring forward these issues that were facing our Black children, our Black educators, and our Black families. And as the years have gone by, I've learned so much so that I call her my education grandmother, because she's took the time to show me, to guide me, to mentor me, to pour into me, but also allow me to grow and flourish into the advocate that I am today. As a public school graduate myself, I am so thankful for her fierce advocacy, because I know that the children in the city of Boston and even in the Commonwealth have only benefited from the great things that she has done. Whether it is speaking on behalf of our Black teachers and ensuring that there's advocacy for them, whether it's making sure that the infrastructure issues that are facing our city, particularly in our school system, are addressed, whether it's being at every single school committee meeting, or being at the Opportunity Achievement Gap meetings, or making sure that she's speaking to those who are in power and speaking truth and not holding our tongue, because she recognizes that if she does not speak, some child does not get an opportunity. And it's for that reason we are celebrating her today. The Rise Up for Equity Award is an award that MAC will give annually to Massachusetts advocates whose work in education reflect MAC's commitment to removing the barriers to educational and life opportunities for children and youth. This will be the first award given for the Rise Up for Equity Award. And I can think of no other person better than my educational grandmother, Mrs. Barbara E. Fields, to be the recipient of this award. The award reads as such. The 2021 Rise Up Award for Equity Award is presented to Barbara E. Fields in recognition for your tireless commitment to removing the barriers to educational life opportunities for Massachusetts children and youth. Ms. Barbara, it is my esteemed pleasure to give you this award to you, one who is greatly deserving, and I pray that you continue your advocacy from now until you can't go any longer. God bless you.
Okay. Thank you so much. It's wonderful. I'm going to try to accept this without crying. Not very good at. I'm real good at talking about our children and the work that needs to be done, but not so good at accepting an award, especially when it comes from an organization such as the Massachusetts Advocates for Children. And that's mainly because I know the work that this organization has done. I know the leadership that it has provided. So to be recognized by the Mass Advocates for Children is more than I ever imagined. So I want to thank you. I want to thank you to board members. I want to thank you to Mass Advocates for Children. And I want to especially thank Ravi Burtner for the very kind and gracious comments that he made, except for one where he calls me grandmother again. But, and especially to Kevin. When Kevin called me and informed me that Mac wanted to present this award to me, my immediate response was, no. You know, I shouldn't be getting this award. There are other people. He sort of stopped me. And he said to me, you know, tell us, and this might not be the exact words, but he said, you know, tell us who to give our award to. And I was sort of taken aback because it was like, yeah, that's right. I can't tell him who to give the award to. But I must say that I was just so honored that it could not be me that is being recognized, because there are so many people out there who work really hard, day to day, the parents, the educators, members of the community. And so I accept this on behalf of all the other people that are out there working tirelessly each day. And as Reverend Bodrick said, the young people who are coming up, who will take our place and working with us. And I am so proud of the people who are getting engaged now, because some of us, we need some new ideas, as I said to him. And we are just so happy to have him and others working in the vineyards with us. So again, I thank you. I accept this on behalf of all of us who are advocating for the children in the city. Thank you very much.
Congratulations, Barbara, and thank you so much for a lifetime of effort to build a more equitable education system for every Boston student. I have to say it has been an honor to be able to take that fight on alongside you as a student and now as an adult for so long. Our speakers tonight all have one thing in common: a vision for a better future in education and the knowledge and the passion to make that vision a reality. That's why they're a part of the MAC community, and that's why you are too. Your financial support of MAC is going to help us work towards that vision and that future. So please, if you haven't already, take a moment to think about how much support you could give MAC. Visit the Donate Now link down in the program menu and stand with us as we work through this equitable recovery from this tragic pandemic. Your gift, whether it's $5, $500, $5,000, is a powerful statement that you share our vision that every child has a right to a quality education. And right now, amidst everything that's happening, MAC is bringing to life our vision of inclusion, of support, and equity to families in this recovery by providing resource after resource to families who desperately need help during this challenging time. From our helpline to our resource clearinghouse, our monthly chats and charlas are all available free of charge to those who need them. And as we help individual families, we also then devote time and energy to advocating for legislative and policy changes that are going to make education more equitable for all Massachusetts families. That is the MAC model that has been at our core since Hugh B. Jones started down this beautiful road in 1969. Many of you have found us through those chats or through our helpline. We're honored by your presence here tonight. De pronto muchos de ustedes nos han encontrado a través de esas charlas o por a través de nuestro helpline. Gracias por estar con nosotros esta noche. I'm so happy to say that generous supporters, sponsors, and all of the MAC community have brought us to a total of over $60,000 raised for this event. And don't forget that you can double that value right now by giving tonight. So if everyone who registered for this event gives us just $25, 25, we will get to meet our $10,000 goal for the evening. Please click the Donate Now link in your menu to make your gift now. And I want to thank you again for joining us and for helping us build a more equitable future. I now want to welcome back Kevin Murray, MAC's Executive Director, for closing remarks. I will be waiting at the end of the program in the Meet the Speakers room to greet you all, and I hope to see you there.
Well, I should certainly have done a better job at figuring out somebody who could come along and bring us toward our next part of this event after that lineup. Just think about it. Carlos Rojas, Johnny Hamilton Mason, Reverend Willie Bodrick, Carolina Vargas, remembrance of Susan Cole, including a remembrance, an unforgettable remembrance by Hugh B. Jones. And then, certainly not least, in our program was being able to recognize somebody who's shown the kind of commitment to the young people in Boston that Barbara Fields has been able to show. It is a very difficult set of acts to follow, but I am here to lead us into the last part of our event. Before I do that, I have to thank Carlos for another exceptional job of guiding us through a complex program. There is a reason that the Academy Awards have been trying to lure you away from us, Carlos. Que se vayan. I also want to thank Lilia Malikci, Anna Amy Karua and B. Fofajit as 3 MAC staffers who have put a huge amount of effort into making this event possible. Mil gracias. You did a fantastic job. Tonight, many of you have shown your continuing generosity by providing more resources to help support MAC's work. We pledge to use those resources, every dollar of them, to continue to make a difference in the lives of Massachusetts children and youth. And I really, really, really want to encourage you to stay with us as we head into the last part of this event. First, we wish to bring you a closing number that we have come to see as kind of an anthem for this moment, as performed by the Detroit Youth Choir. You should know that after this event, MAC will make donations to that choir, as well as the Boston Children's Chorus and the Cardinal Sheehan School Choir of Baltimore, all of whom have inspired us with amazing renditions of this song. After this musical interlude, Lilia will run past you a short series of event credits, thanking some of the people and organizations that make MAC possible through their support. Please stay with us to view those credits and then join us in our post-event reception. As you now know, after the program ends, our keynote speaker, Reverend Bodrick, and our honoree, Barbara Fields, will await you in the Meet the Speakers room, where we hope you will go to greet them and congratulate them. I will also be available in that room, as will our MC and other speakers, I believe. We will also keep the platform's meetup function alive until at least 8 p.m. Our hope is that you'll use that function to connect and greet each other as you might do on your way out of an in-person event. We're doing the best we can to do some community building despite the challenges. Thank you one last time for joining us tonight. Your presence here inspires, encourages, and lifts us up. In signaling that you share our passion for educational equity and justice, you give us hope for the future, the kind of hope that keeps us all going. Please, thanks again for being here and enjoy the rest of your evening.